And thanks, Todd, for being the permanent MC at every single CHRV event. You do it so well every time. I can see why they keep on asking you back. And I realize CHRV is a non-partisan organization. You do great work within all political parties, but may I add, it is especially fitting for me tonight to be here with you at the Albany Club, which is Sir John A. Macdonald's old drinking club, and it has been the host to many Conservative Prime Ministers and Premiers. So for those of you that may not be of Conservative persuasion, hopefully through osmosis and the atmosphere at the Albany Club that you start to steer a little bit more to the right. I should also acknowledge it's great to be joined here today. I know the councillor from Markham, of course, but also a few Conservative candidates. I noticed that Kevin Moore was here, who carried the Conservative flag in Toronto Centre, to Ken Karupa, who just won the nomination provincially in Scarborough, and hopefully will be joining the provincial legislature whenever they have a provincial election. And to my good friend Chuck Conkle, who ran in Scarborough, and I think John McKay he won by such a small margin that I think he's found a friend at Elections Canada. Somehow he's found a way to remove Chuck from his riding because he was such a strong candidate for the Conservatives. But today we're not here to talk about the Conservatives, we're here to talk about our common interest in the situation in Sri Lanka. And I just wanted to say that the CHRV has been a very instrumental organization in setting the Canadian policy on this. I know many of you have been working at this for years. And until the injustices are accounted for, it's not appropriate to have the Commonwealth in Sri Lanka. And that makes me tremendously proud of our Prime Minister, because I think it is the right thing to do. But it also makes me proud of your organization, because it's your organization that has educated decision makers in Ottawa on what was happening. And I think and that is a deserved applause for CHRV, because you have played a big role in the process. There's been a natural audience for you in Ottawa, in the sense that as Conservatives, I know our Prime Minister and our Foreign Affairs Minister John Barrie feel very strongly that it is a Canadian value to stand up for human rights. And what has occurred in Sri Lanka is beyond the pale of anyone's imagination. We said after Rwanda that never again could a situation like that occur, and yet it has. And that's why it's so important that the culprits of the crimes in Sri Lanka, that we actually have accountability, we actually have justice. So if there's ever a dictatorship or regime again in the future that contemplates serious crimes against humanity, war crimes, that they'll realize what ends up happening. If those who are accountable for these crimes end up being held to account, it'll send a strong message that eventually you will pay consequences for committing those crimes. And I know our Prime Minister is going to continue to use his persuasion at the Commonwealth to do whatever we can to make sure that that voice is heard very loudly. And I haven't given up, and I know our Prime Minister and our Foreign Affairs Minister John Barrie have not given up on the hope that we can boycott the conference in Sri Lanka. Certainly not having our Prime Minister there sends a strong message, but I know our Prime Minister has spoken to other world leaders, and if there is a possibility that some of the senior heads of government in the Commonwealth choose to join our Prime Minister and boycott the Commonwealth, it could eventually not happen at all. And that, I think, would send a very strong message to the world, because it would expose Sri Lanka for what it is, and that is a government that has got away with war crimes and the most serious human rights abuses. And I know the CHRV is going to continue to use this organization to make sure that this concern is heard again and again by government leaders. And I've been given permission from Babu to announce tonight that there's going to be another CHRV major event on June 8th. We are going to have a cabinet minister who's very well known, Maxime Bernier, address this organization. And what we hope to be one of the largest events that CHRV puts on. And the more events like that, where you're having senior officials like Maxime Bernier come to express his support for what you're doing, and express his collective concern for the fight for justice in Sri Lanka, is turning the ball in the right direction. And I realize we've sort of won the battle in Canada in the sense that we've convinced government leaders, but we always need to maintain that. And that's why events like the one on June 8th are important. Because these are volunteers organizing these events. And we are up against a serious competition in the sense that the Sri Lankan High Commission has paid staff working full-time to try to push their propaganda. I mentioned when I first started bringing this up and writing letters and bringing it up in caucus and in the House of Commons and writing columns about it, the High Commissioner came to my office and said, "It's all ridiculous." And I said, "Then why did you turn down my visa to visit IDP camps? If it's all ridiculous, why are you a government that continues to do everything possible to hide what's happening? Only a government that has committed crimes hides their actions." And she stopped visiting my office. But the fact that she was willing to make the rounds on Parliament Hill as a paid employee of the Sri Lankan government means they have an organized paid lobby group in Ottawa. But the volunteers in this organization, unpaid volunteers, beat that. You won. You won you won in the sense that you convinced the Prime Minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the government caucus that it is the right thing to do to fight for justice in Sri Lanka. And so I'm here today simply to applaud you, congratulate you for what you've done in Canada, and to hope that the courage of conviction we have in Canada can carry on in other Commonwealth countries, and that Prime Minister Harper will have allies in other countries. I know David Cameron shares those concerns, and hopefully we can see more leaders like Prime Minister Harper speak out, and hopefully we can see eventually justice to be found in Sri Lanka. Thank you for listening to me tonight, and it's always a tremendous pleasure to speak to you, not just because I can't say no to Babu, but because I love attending these CHRV events.